Ancient Egypt was a land of gods, magic, and mysteries that survive even thousands of years later. For Egyptians, the line between the natural and the supernatural was thin. Spells and amulets were not superstition. They were essential tools for survival, protection, and power. Every aspect of life was influenced by magic. A newborn child was given protective charms. Farmers placed amulets in fields to ensure the Nile flooded favorably. Sailors carried spells to calm storms. Even the pharaoh relied on magic to maintain authority, bless battles, and ward off enemies. Amulets were everywhere, worn around the neck, hidden in clothing, or buried with the dead. Each was a symbol of protection, but also of power. The Eye of Horus protected the wearer from evil and misfortune. The scarab beetle symbolized rebirth, ensuring the soul's safe journey after death. Amulets of crocodiles, lions, and serpents represented strength, courage, and divine intervention. But these objects were not merely symbolic. They were imbued with spells written by priests, artisans, or sorcerers. Words held power. Hieroglyphs carved into amulets or painted on papyri could change reality, heal illness, protect against curses, or even inflict harm on enemies. Magic in Egypt was highly structured. It was not random chanting. It followed precise rules, rituals, and timing. Certain spells were only effective on specific days, during specific hours, or in particular locations. Priests and magicians spent years mastering these arts, understanding the interaction between words, objects, and the unseen forces of the universe. Amulets and spells also controlled life after death. Tombs were filled with charms to protect the deceased from demons, snakes, or thieves. The Book of the Dead contained detailed spells to navigate the dangerous underworld. Even a minor mistake in preparation could mean the soul would never reach eternal life. Magic was survival. Without it, even the powerful could fall victim to unseen dangers. But magic was also used offensively. Enemies could be cursed. Spells inscribed on statues or figurines represented them, allowing misfortune, disease, or death to be directed at specific targets. Priests wielded power over both kings and commoners through these unseen forces. Amulets could bring misfortune, while protective charms shielded the righteous. The power of amulets and spells was not limited to humans. Animals were protected too. Cats, considered sacred, often wore charms to ward off harm. Sacred bulls, ibis, and crocodiles were adorned with symbols ensuring their strength and vitality. Even crops and household objects were blessed or cursed to ensure safety and prosperity. Some of the most powerful magic involved hieroglyphs, written on papyrus or carved into walls. Words could immobilize enemies, summon protective spirits, or bind the living and the dead. Temples contained powerful inscriptions that amplified the pharaoh's authority. Every carving, every painted symbol was a conduit of unseen forces. But magic carried risk. Spells misused could backfire. Amulets incorrectly made could fail. Priests who abused their knowledge sometimes faced severe punishment. Egyptians understood that power was not neutral. It demanded respect, precision, and fear. Magic in ancient Egypt was not confined to temples or the elite. It permeated every home, every household, and every life. Amulets were common possessions, simple stones or finely carved jewelry, each carrying protection, power, or influence. Even the humblest farmer would place a small charm around his neck or hang a talisman in his doorway. The Egyptians believed that words themselves had power. Spells were carefully recited, often in secret, sometimes whispered only to the wind. A poorly spoken spell could anger the spirits, bring illness, or cause misfortune. But a perfectly crafted incantation could heal the sick, protect travelers, or curse enemies across miles. Curses were as real as blessings. The Egyptians believed strongly in the concept of Heka, the divine force of magic. By creating a figurine of an enemy and placing it in a tomb or temple, priests could direct harm, disease, or death toward that person. This was not superstition. It was strategic power. Magic was a weapon as much as it was a shield. Pharaohs used amulets and spells to consolidate authority. The Eye of Horus, scarabs, and protective figures were not only spiritual tools, but also symbols of dominance. When a ruler adorned himself with these charms, he was sending a message. I am protected by the gods, and any opposition will be punished, in life or in death. Even death itself required magic. The process of mummification was filled with ritual spells to guard the body and soul. Amulets were placed in strategic locations, over the heart, near the eyes, within the wrappings, each serving a function in the journey to the afterlife. Spells inscribed on papyri or carved into tomb walls directed the deceased safely through dangerous realms, protecting them from demons, thieves, and rivals. A missing amulet or incorrect incantation could trap the soul in eternal torment. Some spells were terrifyingly precise. They targeted specific enemies, ensuring harm in the physical or spiritual world. The execration rituals involved writing the names of enemies on pottery or figurines, which were then smashed or buried in secret. This ritual symbolically destroyed the enemy while magically directing misfortune toward them. Priests carried out these rituals for pharaohs and nobles alike, wielding immense power over life and death. Amulets also conveyed social status. Certain stones, symbols, and materials were reserved for royalty or high priests. Wearing one without permission could be considered offensive, even dangerous. The wrong charm, misused or misappropriated, could invite divine punishment. Magic was an intricate balance of skill, hierarchy, and fear. Even ordinary spells had deadly consequences. Household charms protected children, homes, and animals, but also deterred thieves or untrustworthy servants. If a servant stole or disobeyed, the wrong spell could strike them with illness, misfortune, or even death. Magic reinforced authority at every level, personal, social, and political. The most powerful spells were recorded in sacred texts like the Book of the Dead, the coffin texts, and various papyri found in tombs. These texts contained instructions not only for protection and guidance, but also for vengeance. A well-prepared spell could ensure the pharaoh's enemies were cursed even after death, leaving them powerless and dishonored in the afterlife. Magic extended to every facet of Egyptian life. Animals were protected with charms, crops were blessed to prevent famine. Temples radiated magical authority, reminding the population that the gods, through the pharaoh and priests, controlled fortune, health, and death itself. And yet, magic was not merely defensive, it was also used to manipulate, control, and dominate. The fear of curses, the belief in unseen forces, and the ever-present power of amulets ensured obedience, loyalty, and respect. Every spell, every charm, was a reminder that life, health, and fate were not entirely mortal concerns. They were subject to divine and human control intertwined. In ancient Egypt, amulets and spells were far more than objects or words. They were survival tools, instruments of authority, weapons of revenge, and shields against the unknown. They were embedded into every life, from the lowliest villager to the greatest pharaoh, shaping behavior, enforcing power, and leaving traces of their influence that survive even today. Magic, protection, and fear. Intertwined in a civilization where the unseen forces ruled as powerfully as the living pharaohs themselves. And to this day, the amulets and spells of Egypt whisper of gods, curses, and an eternal struggle between mortality and divine power.